Patrick, I've had two clients in 3 years where I've told them, like, look, dude, I don't know what to do with you anymore because you're doing really fucking good. Like, what are we doing here? We're meeting it for an hour every week. Like, why?
But that's
Like,
an intervention. Why are you still coming in here when you're well?
Yeah.
Not you're fired.
Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast, where the truth will set you free.
So women. Just kidding. and
with that, welcome to the Men's Mental Health Panel.
This is going to be just Little Rascals, but for like middle-aged white guys, basically.
Yes. No, we have to be mediocre middle-aged white guys.
Mediocre middle-aged white guys. Yes, thank
Hell
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate the whole
Speak
label.
for yourselves.
We got at least one person cardigan maxing on this panel.
I'm a slightly above average, but marginally slightly above mediocre. This much.
That's reasonable.
Awesome. So last time we left this off and didn't touch it, but the worried well. So a lot of the people I work with are coming off of suicide attempts, overdoses, some of them coming out of jail and prison. It's like a highly acute form of care working in a rehab where the problems are very large and very immediate. But a lot of like private practice stuff deals with people who their problems may be less severe, what we call the worried well. And I just want y'all's take on that. This might be the most controversial topic we've touched thus far, but go for it.
Look, I'm in therapy. Am I worried well?
I love the slow sip, right? Like, Tell me, chamomile, what is this?
Should we
I
define
just
it
practice
first?
psychology. How are we drawing a line between people who deserve therapy and people who are, oh, you're fine, you're just worried and well at the same time, simultaneously, somehow?
I think there's a couple things that I would get at. One, I think there's a lot of people who lean on their therapist as a deep, meaningful relationship, which that can be good sometimes. But I think if that's an ongoing relationship that's the deepest one in your life, that should at some point be replaced by friends and family. I think that's one big part of it. Two, I think there's almost in certain circles a certain cachet or social capital that comes from having a therapist that's kind of might be beyond our purview. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. But what are their goals?
I think you're nailing the hard parts because you're an actual ethical therapist so far. Like, what are their goals, right? There are plenty of therapists out there that are like, if the card swipes, the 50 minutes are yours, right? So I think that we have this whole setup when it comes to worried well. It's almost like another designation that we use for virtue signaling. And to like Ryan's point, I think that there are clients out there that they retain a therapist almost like a Monopoly card, like a get out of free jail card of like whenever they say something terrible to their loved ones, they're like, but I'm in therapy, right? So like at what point are you an enabler versus actually helping someone process something and move through life?
Who decides this? Is there a vote?
So no, I have a vote. So I am the resident non-controversial one here. And
the people's therapist
correct.
is never controversial.
That's
right.
correct.
The people would not have voted for the people's therapist if that were not the case. It's objective. So, look, I have met people that are fucked up like a football bat. And I've also met people that are literally just dealing with issues that we deal with in this hyper complex, really bizarre hyperspeed society we live in, that we can all agree I'm a traditionalist primalist, and I can't ignore that whatever is going on right now, right here in human society, at least in the West, and even with my friends in the Philippines, anybody that's read my Substack, these girls that I've adopted from the Philippines, it's not in like Manila. This is an island that when I met them, it was mud and bamboo. But because of the Chinese and the Australians, life is moving for them so fast. Nothing that was true 20 years ago is true today. So their parents literally can't advise them. And so when I have men and women come to me, I don't get mad about the worried well. They're doing fine. They're just having an existential, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? Now, I have a pretty substantial background in corporate America and military and things. There's things happening right now. I don't know how many of us have read like the fourth turning, the third turning, that whole philosophy that every society goes through these 30, 40-year cycles, 1 turning, 2 turning, 3 turning, 4 turning. The fourth turning happens to be destruction and re-evolution. We're in a fourth turning right now. I can't explain it any other way. And so when I have totally sane, completely mentally fine people come to me saying, I don't know what to tell my wife at the end of every month when we can't pay the bills. I'm doing everything I can. Or a wife saying, I'm doing everything I can do. And my husband is giving me the side eye like I'm a piece of shit. Is he going to cheat on me with this Instagram model? Or kids come to me saying, I don't know what to do because my dad, literal story, my stepdad just declared himself trans and my mom is trying to hold our family together and she doesn't want to be married to him anymore. Is that kid messed up or is he worried well? He is well, but he is worried. And there's a reason for this because we live in very exciting times. And so I don't have a problem with this term worried well. It makes sense. I also know I have a completely other subset of people that in the 60s, 70s, 80s were literally crazy. They're schizophrenic or bipolar or whatever. And they need care at a medical level that we have to suss out. We're living in these wild times where therapists have to be able to say, look, dude, keep your head down, like stay motivated. It gets worse. Let's go. As opposed to, yeah, dude, we got to talk to a psychiatrist. You need some lithium. Like, anyway, go on. I'm putting up a solar light.
The fourth turn is real and it is here.
Okay?
I have a feeling Dr. Lockwood has something completely uncontroversial to say right now.
Yeah, I'm also like my friend Jake over there, completely uncontroversial and very mild-mannered and very agreeable as a person. And so I'll do my best to contribute something. So I guess there's two things that really stick out to me about this conversation that I think are not merely just meta points, but practical points, because I like to be a practical person. So when we're talking about worried well, what do we specifically mean by that? Is it just you have lots of feelings, however, you're still functional and your life is still going relatively well on like the ASAM 6 dimensions or however you want to divide life, right?
I like it so
if,
far.
If that's what we mean for worried well, then I think we can have a particular kind of conversation. So first, I'd want to know like what specifically is a reasonable definition we can all agree on. But then the second thing that I'd like to say is, to Ed's point in particular, which I think is really important, is who decides. So to me, when we talk about this topic, which is admittedly controversial, I would say that if you have any sense of ethics and any like reasonable agreement with the principles you say you have, then you're going to try to make a principled decision about who needs therapy at what level, right? And so I would really want to know what the principles of the practitioner are, number one, and I can certainly tell you my principles. But number two, I'd want to know like how they actually think about their ethics code as well. Because for some people, their ethics code is just a thing they put on and take off as needed. And then for other people, their ethics code is a way of living, right? So in the American Psychological Association, which I have all sorts of problems with, and I think it's completely a dumpster fire and garbage in every way, shape, and form, their ethics code still has some interesting and valuable pieces to it, for instance. So, you know, beneficence, like doing something good for people. Are you actually doing something good for people? Or are you mostly just doing something good for yourself? I think that's a perfectly valid core principle from the APA's ethics code, for instance. Now, I summarize it as opposed to reading it literally, but I really like the principle of beneficence. Are you actually doing good for the person? because there
love
are
that.
plenty of hobby therapists out there that really just want to be someone's paid best friend. And they would like to just kind of like get their emotions taken care of as a friend and also get paid for it. And I think those people are despicable and should be beaten with a bag of badgers or something. But
Patrick, if I may,
Badges are
you and I have
giving,
never
pennies are
disagreed
better.
once. Patrick, you and I have never disagreed once a single time. Look, there are also therapists, and I went to grad school with some of them, that they want to deconstruct the existence of their clients for no other reason that they are supposed to deconstruct. And my thought is, like, if I've worked with very fundamentalist Muslim guys that I'm not aligned with, Christian guys, secular guys, just dudes trying to make it, chicks trying to make it. Never once would I think to deconstruct their world. Like, they're trying to navigate based on the heuristics they have.
yeah,
I would never have, I would never divine the arrogance to myself to say, you know what? You are so fucked up. I have to deconstruct your entire world, atomize it, and rebuild it according to some kind of view of mine. And so, Patrick, I think there's a lot of therapists right now in 2025 that deconstruct what should not be touched.
I think a lot of
I mean-
people also step into it. They feel like they get a license, and that therefore that license gives them authority to be beyond reproach. I mean, and that's what we see a lot of unfortunately, our colleagues doing now is I sat in class, got marked present for 6 years, and now I can tell you what to do. And to like sort of piggyback on your idea, Freeman, is this idea of like, you have therapists that are treating human beings like the Sims game. Like, I've worked, for a period of time, I worked with a lot of the transitioning clinics in the hospitals as a contracted therapist to write letters of support on whether that individual was ready to transition.
sure.
Now, my whole focus was to go in there and to basically be lethal with documentation about how people in positions of authorities were assigning outcomes. You can't come to an individual who has a history of self-harm and tell them that that self-harm is going to end as soon as they have a reassignment surgery. Yet I was in those case conceptualizations. And so the worried well, I go, okay, is that going to be the next backslide of like, okay, so everyone needs this? I mean, is therapy almost turning into big pharma where we're saying everyone needs therapy when in reality, not everyone needs therapy? To Ed's point, yeah, I think that there should be some buy-in from the individual, the client looking for services. Maybe they feel like they do need the support. Wonderful. As long as you're actually following some sort of treatment plan or there's some sort of recognizable growth. I was talking to some clinicians here locally in Nashville the other day, and their eyes crossed when I said, hey, how do you guys actually measure whether or not your treatment plans are effective? Like, do you actually do any sort of clientele surveying? Do you find out whether or not the client feels good about it? Because all they could talk about is how good they feel with where their clients are. Would your clients be giving me the same feedback?
Yeah.
Jonathan, what you got?
Well, there's several things that have gone through my head. What Adam was just saying made me think back to when I was in grad school. I wish I knew more about what I was using. Any of y'all familiar with Scott D. Miller? He co-wrote The Heart and Soul of Change. Him
Is
and
that the
Hubble.
motivational interviewing guy?
I don't know if he's not he's kind of solution focused in his background, I think. Oh, he did research. And Patrick, are you familiar with him?
Yeah, he's one of the two. Berg and Insoo Kim Berg and Miller are the two people who created solution focused therapy. Yeah.
So he's like in that Milton Erickson,
Yeah.
school of first or second degree students. I believe Miller was a first degree student of Erickson at one point,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. Miller helped to co-write The Heart and Soul of Change, and Miller was a part of the research that a lot of us have probably seen that produced the graph about what percentage of therapist controlled versus non-therapist controlled factors contribute to change.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I'm going to butcher the statistics. It's been too long since I looked at it, but I think it's about 60% of change is attributed to extra therapeutic factors. And so had nothing to do with the therapist and the therapeutic relationship.
That's right.
And then the rest of the factors are hope, technique, therapeutic relationship. Am I missing anything, Patrick?
Well, just to be clear about one thing you said specifically, it's the patient's perception of the therapeutic relationship. It's never the
Yes.
therapist's perception. The research
Correct.
is very clear about that.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, what is it? The type of cowboy hat that you wear?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing a factor in there, but the patient's perception of the therapeutic relationship, I believe, is about 30% of the
Yeah.
total pie chart graph. So it's significant
Placebo is
percentage
also
there.
like 5 to 10%, depending upon
Yeah.
which studies you read. So there's placebo there too.
So
What about
Because it's all of
Riz,
us.
Patrick? How much
Huh?
Riz? How much Riz do
Oh,
I bring?
Riz. But see, the thing is, there's always moderator variables when you look at moderation analyses for these things. And so it's also the type of cardigan that you're wearing that will
Yes.
predict the Riz.
Yeah.
Look,
The Sigma Riz, I
Yep.
believe the children
Ed
say.
and I are impenetrable on the cardigan game. I don't know
Yep.
what the rest of y'all are doing, but
I'm the
look-
only one. I am the only one wearing the shirt that won 2 world wars. Okay, so it's still too hot in
Those
Texas
colors
for
don't run.
any. They do not run. No, no, sir. Yeah, I saw that
Speak
earlier.
for
Baby,
yourself.
don't hurt me.
I wear
So-
this to my high conflict couples. Just so they know.
So I want to introduce a little concept. I hear the word trauma tossed around ubiquitously. And there's two people, Dr. Perrin and the people's therapist, who've been in the military and seen a different kind of trauma. And the word trauma seems to be used kind of in a circular definition. Trauma is whatever traumatizes me. And I think it'd be helpful to pull this apart, where trauma is like a specific event that could be like life-threatening or seriously threatening. And then there's what level of distress there is. Because there's some people who come back from war with very little, side effects. And there's some people that have, the boss says something mean at work and I'm just, in a meltdown. So the difference between the actual event and my response to the event. So one example is infidelity can cause people more stress than a serious car accident, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of times when we talk about worried well, there's a level of distress that we're dealing with that's going to be different for every person, regardless of what their actual circumstances are. I'm wondering, is there a certain point where you say, okay, we've handled some of this distress, we've taught you some tools, it's time to push the baby bird out of the nest? Does that make any sense?
Yes, but
Ed,
I would like to say that most veterans get paid. If they're active duty, they're getting paid on the 1st and the 15th. If they have a service-connected disability, they're getting paid on the 1st and the 15th. So they may not qualify for some people's moral judgments on what qualifies as worried well because they have money, and therefore they probably don't deserve therapy. But no, I think a lot of the big problems here is the difference between stress and trauma. Now, betrayal is absolutely traumatic. It can be beyond the ability to cope that they currently have the resources for. I think, to me, that's the difference between trauma and stress, is do you have the existing capability to manage it?
So
And if
perceived
it's new, you have to
helplessness.
develop a new capacity to manage it.
That's kind of interesting. I'd like to flesh this out a little bit more, because your traditional understanding of trauma, there's a handful of different things, but usually something life-threatening or watching another person die, like that type of thing. It was about the event itself. And what you're saying is trauma is more about the response to the event than
Oh,
does
yeah.
that make sense?
If you've seen it 100 times, it won't bother you. There are tons of people. One of the participants for my dissertation, for example, she had experienced so much gang violence and sexual assault that by the time she actually saw combat-related stuff, it was old hat. It was fine. Oh, that's fine. Who cares about that? Let me tell you about the real dangerous stuff. It's because that what is traumatic are the events that are beyond their existing resources to manage. Because there can be events, and this can be a straw that broke the camel's back, because we also have to think about cumulative or repetitive trauma. you can experience the same thing over and over and over again, and one thing can finally break, and now you are beyond your capacity to manage or cope with effectively. I'm seeing some hands going up.
If I may, so my wife and I talked about this last night because, you know, I did Marine Corps things, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. Our deployment to Marja was absolutely kinetic. I mean, there was a lot of violence and human loss on both sides, both things that happened to us as a Marine Corps and things we did. And at the time, God, if you guys knew how enthusiastic, can you imagine me being enthusiastic at the moment in
Every
doing
once in a while.
things that need, yeah, right. So, it was years later that it kind of caught up with me of like, holy shit, we did those things. We loved those things. We loved to do those things. And how does that translate to what I am and what I'm doing now? And this absolute coldness between the difficulties and hardships and like absolute ultimate levels of violence and loss that I saw and did there versus the things that I was having to deal with in America, you know, as a civilian again, that were so minimal that it made me it almost made me sociopathic to the point where I went and had the MMPI-2 administered to me by a no kidding professional psychiatrist in California because I was worried that I was a fucking sociopath. Sorry for the language, but like people would come to me with their issues and I would be like, what are you talking about? This isn't the thing. Like, do you know how good you have it? And I had to get right with the levels of wickedness that I was able and willing, not just able to do, but willing to do and living with versus what people were stressed out about day to day. And I realized that there was such a gap that it was almost Luciferian, like what I was willing and able to do versus what they were dealing with. I had to figure out how to bring myself to a place where I was human again. The Marine Corps is great at teaching you how to do this, not so great at teaching you how to come back to that, right? Hence, suicide, murder, drinking, driving 150 miles on a motorcycle, cheating, drugs, because that is fucking sexy. You do those things, wild, right? So the best explanation I have seen is Dr. Jonathan Shea, Achilles in Vietnam, his book he wrote on moral injury, is that when you go into this kind of berserker mode, it is a good thing because you survive in the moment, but it stretches you like a rubber band to what you need to do to achieve mission, and you stretch back and you're never quite the same. And because you're never quite the same, you don't ever fit in with where you were before. So your wife, your kids, your grandma, grandpa, brothers, sisters, mother, father, they don't know who you are anymore. And you know that they'll never get it. And what I heard again and again and again from my veteran brothers and sisters, they never went back to therapy because when they went the first or second time, they would say, they don't get it. They can't get it. And then they'd go kill themselves. And I was in a similar situation, which is one of the reasons why I did this suck fest of going through grad school and getting this fucking degree and license. Because I've been there. It fucking sucks. Like I literally went into a shrink when I was doing a fifth of whiskey Monday to Wednesday and then Wednesday to Saturday just to make it. And I went into a shrink and said, hey, combat trauma, dead dudes, I smell them. I can't look at hamburger meat without vomiting. I can't look at my kids' faces when they get injured on a bike without getting filled with rage because they were so fucking stupid, they hurt themselves. And he said, have you ever considered that maybe you're transgender? Literally, that is what happened to me. The first shrink I went to, no kidding, PhD.
Was that accurate?
Specialist in trauma.
Have you
Are you
transitioned?
transgendered? I don't want to
You tell
judge.
me.
Sorry. What are your pronouns?
Well,
My
do you mind
Lord.
if I jump in for a quick second?
No, hit it,
here?
dude. Sorry, I
Because
go on and on.
no, I think you're highlighting something that I was struggling to articulate.
No,
But
you weren't. You
it's
were doing
also
so
one of the
good, dude.
biggest
Just
differences between
fucking
stress and
cardigan.
trauma. Because
Uh-huh.
stress is kind of an event, and when you remove the stressor, we can maybe get better or return to baseline or whatever. But trauma is a process. Like there's a developmental arc to trauma. Like you have to go through something. You have to learn, reevaluate, re-update your rules of the world, especially if you underwent something morally injurious, which again is separate from going on to get the disease of post-traumatic stress disorder, which not everybody who experiences trauma goes on to have. But again, I think we're getting semantic here.
Yeah,
But trauma is a process. There's an arc to it. Like you were going through something. You were learning new ways to manage and process things.
man.
And
Look,
so I've at times struggled with like how do you pin it down what trauma is, and the thing that I've moved into is, like you said, trauma is an event, it's not a feeling. Stress is a feeling, right? And that feeling then passes. But I think that also goes to like how our language has been hijacked, because how many times do we hear people say I'm feeling traumatized? Like it is or it isn't. Like
this
when
is the
it, like
micro-trauma.
I'm feeling AIDS right now. That doesn't work, right? So like these are those situations where trauma is actually something that's definable. And it's not necessarily subjective. Now, everyone can experience different events and receive different levels of trauma or no trauma from them. But it's interesting how we use trauma as like this wide brush of basically social excuse. If I can find some reason to say some sort of trauma happened, then it can justify whatever maladaptive behaviors I've ever done. I mean, I had something today. I was working with a couple. The betrayal has happened. And the justification for the offending spouse was, well, this all stems from my parents. Like at some point, it doesn't. Like I have no doubt that maybe you didn't get healthy relationships role modeled to you, but there is a period of time in everyone's life where you have the ownership and the responsibility for your actions. And that's what concerns me a lot when I go to conferences, when I look at where psychology is going today. Basically, we are no longer looking for objective truth. We are looking for ways to co-sign everyone's bullshit.
Yeah, I have something I can kind of tie together the beginning of our conversation with this part of our conversation, I think, somewhat. Um, so yeah, I work in the education, K through 12 education support world, like training educators, and I have been mortified many times by the way the topic of trauma is approached, because it is this idea of there is trauma in every cookie jar, and if you put your hand in the cookie jar, you're going to come out with PTSD on you. And it's lurking around every corner. It may jump out at you. And then the trainings involve lots of recounting of trauma disturbance stories in rooms full of educators. That, like, it's different if we are sitting in a room and hearing those stories, because we have an inner cognitive pathway that are our therapeutic modalities that we can start thinking through, okay, how would I help this person? These educators do not have that. And so what ends up happening is this unintentional secondary effect where they become paralyzed because they are trusting this expert trainer that the trauma is in the cookie jar and that everybody's got it in their pockets. And so I can't move around the room because there's eggshells all over the floor. So the way we talk about topics like trauma or topics like diagnostic labels have impact on the maintenance of those problems and sometimes the amplification of those problems. So, as something I've said on Ryan's podcast before, I don't think I've said it on a men's panel, but the field of marriage and family therapy started as a counter reaction to the way that diagnostic labels were being talked about at that time. They were being mainstreamed into the general populace, kind of into popular level discussion. And the first family therapists were psychiatrists who were witnessing increasing difficulty with treatment because patients were internalizing their labels as a form of identity. So the development of general systems theory as a way to intervene was in part a counter-reaction, a way to step out of using traditional diagnostic labels and shift the language game such that we're not even talking about diagnostic labels, we're talking about relational patterns in a non-pathologizing way to sort of try to rebalance the problem, to be able to shake loose that diagnostic label identity and break them out of the homeostasis that was keeping them from being able to achieve desired change in those situations. So
Can we do that for the word worried well and have therapists stop projecting that term into what they think are therapists or clients who don't deserve
Edward,
therapy?
we'll never stop. We'll never stop.
well, so that you were
Your
actually
problems aren't bad enough. You need to get out of the way. I treat the really bad people, so I deserve more treats and prizes.
Well, so what? All right. So what's an alternate term then?
Ed likes to personalize this conversation. I can tell he needs some CBT. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I feel like with any client that I've been
Do a
like
worksheet
stumbling
about
through
it.
work with,
Do a
I've found that
worksheet.
like if you feel like they don't have enough going on, you just ask them about their mom. So like this
Exactly.
worried well
Or their
designation
boss
doesn't
or
really work.
whatever.
Because I just go back to like, so tell me
Yeah.
more about your mom, and there's the trauma.
Yeah.
Right?
So-
It's not
Gonna
a feeling;
smoke 'em
it's
your
an
mom
experience.
What?
So let Ed landed right in the territory that I was headed actually, which is that the way I conceptualize change is a general systems theory lens.
Yeah.
The patient is in a homeostatic pattern that they are unable to change on their own, and usually it's interfering with their life functioning in some way. It may not be a catastrophic impairment that they're experiencing,
Mm.
but it there is an ethical benefit. There's beneficence in supporting an individual in achieving disruption of homeostasis to pursue desired change.
Sure.
And there's a natural, I guess, struggle or uphill battle or inability that every human faces when they're trying to achieve a behavioral change of any kind, which is homeostasis. And so if you have that way of conceptualizing it maybe opens some ways of looking at a concept like this term worried well that we're talking about, where it's okay, it's not worried well, there is some sort of problem, and part of that is the homeostasis is keeping them from moving forward.
Dr.
So-
Lockwood.
Yeah, there's just one real quick thing to add to the various definitions of trauma that are circling about here. So I think perceived helplessness, beyond your resources, I think all these things are good and necessary and sufficient. I think they're just limited to some degree. So one thing I would like to add to this, maybe it's just a different perspective or maybe it's an additional criteria, however you want to view it, is it's a shattering of your fundamental belief in how the world works. And that is not the same thing as just being overwhelmed, because people are overwhelmed all the time. And people are overwhelmed beyond their resources in positively valenced and negatively valenced situations. You're having a super great time at your birthday party. You're having awesome sex. You're having a terrible crisis. All of these things can be beyond your current resources to cope and thrive in the moment. So that's, to me, that's necessary for trauma, and the helplessness is necessary as well. But it also has to shatter something you believe is fundamental, either about yourself or the world, in my view of it.
I want to jump off of that because I feel like, there's a number of, I love where this conversation is going. And Dr. Perrin and the people's therapist have seen like some of the worst things humans are capable of seeing. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts, not to say that it's illegitimate to seek therapy, but, talk about a world-shattering type of thing. That could be watching human lives be taken in front of you. It could be, severe injury, or it could be sexual assault. There's a lot of things like we traditionally think of as trauma. Like when those of you who've been in the military, or like everybody, do you have some kind of feeling when people use that word trauma because someone said something mean online, or because Donald Trump was elected president, or because I'm experiencing normal stress of the workplace? Like at some point, do you say that that's actually not EMDR worthy? That's actually a different type of issue. Do you see like the point I'm driving at?
Everything is
but that's
EMDR
what I
worthy.
kept saying when. Oh no, please go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, that's what I keep saying about stress versus trauma, because being in the Marine Corps is stressful. Being in combat is stressful.
To
To
you,
Patrick's point, completely changing your idea of how the world works is traumatic.
Yeah. And that's what Jake was saying about his experience, I think. If I heard you correctly, it's like you didn't have that worldview shattering experience while you were deep in the middle of that Luciferian behavior of yours. It happened after the fact.
Yeah, it was sitting in a therapist's office listening about the feminine penis.
So somebody accurately diagnosing him as trans.
I'm wondering, like, is there any role for CBT right here to say, like, no, actually, someone saying something you don't like online, that's not life threatening? Is that
okay,
There's
can we get
always a
back
role
to the
for
feminine
CBT.
penis? I was just reading about the feminine penis.
that's what the whole book's about?
I know. It's big.
I didn't realize that the feminine penis was going to take up 6 pages, but here we are.
It's so
All
good
drugs,
that adult Jake is
all
not
drugs.
here. He would be so disappointed in this.
You would.
No. So back to our beloved Dr. Shaw. Holy shit, Edward Parent, are you doing a fucking pipe? I will go do a pipe right now too. That is so classy, Cardigans.
Is this
So-
like in true Freudian fashion where you also have some
fangirling.
Colombian marching powder nearby?
Oh God, should we do a bump
All
together?
of my vices are
Who's-
above the board
who's-
these days.
Who's got an 8-ball? Somebody's got to
Dr.
have an
Perrin
8-ball
told me that
somewhere.
a bowl a day keeps the trauma away. So
I do have weed if you all want. No, it's California.
It's
Oh, the
California.
California.
The Californians like, hey, what are we smoking?
It's California sober.
Hey,
Has anybody here met a traumatized cocaine addict? No answers? Okay, I will go on. All right, so
Moving on.
So
Hey, I was gonna-
Dr. Shea that I was talking about, the way he described it in Achilles in Vietnam was that trauma, what he described trauma was when something exceeds your moral universe, your moral reasoning, which is why when it exceeds your moral universe, that's when it strikes you as trauma. I don't remember who said it. Dr. Perrin, maybe it was you. Luke, maybe it was you. But the gal that had gone through so much gang violence that by the time she got to the military, it was like, what is this?
Yeah.
That was her moral universe. Now,
Yeah.
for me, it was a bit different, right? And this is why we love Dr. Jonathan Haidt, peace be upon him, with his moral foundations reasoning, which is why it was so effective to me, not just reading it, but then practicing it and applying it to couples that are having a difficult time, and also executives that are having a difficult time. But what was the question? It wasn't CBT. You guys threw a bunch of flack at me. We asked what was it? How can people just apply trauma versus experience?
Oh, how do you feel about it being thrown around so casually? Like, oh, my boyfriend didn't buy me flowers. It was so traumatic.
It's look, I remember almost the day that I was in grad school and they were talking trauma. Everything's trauma. It's all trauma. And I was like, God, I've been reading this shit for a long time. I got a very sexy bookcase. I mean, come on now. I didn't buy this today. And I thought, so trauma versus, and I don't remember what I looked up, but it came up, resilience. And so I went down the resilience pipeline. And I asked the professor who was preaching to us, because it wasn't teaching, it was preaching. I said, okay, trauma, but what about teaching people about resilience? And her response was, guys, she went, why would you say that? Just
dare
like
you.
that. And I'm like, that is the right track. Like, I'm on to something here. So I went down the resilience route, because that's really what it is. Whatever issues I had coming out of Afghanistan was resilience based, because I know guys that were absolute war gods who don't have the issues that I ended up having. Resilience. When I'm able to have couples meet with me, if I can talk them through resilience in difficulty or versus difficulty, maybe my semantics are wrong, that is where the strengths comes in. We work on where is the resilience not, and we build the resilience. Patrick, is that a white monster? I'll be so proud of you.
It's a Celsius.
It's a
Of
buddy.
course, it's a
Celsius.
Celsius. Are we going to experience
are
the
you
Celsius
thinking?
belch?
At some point.
Hey,
Unleash.
hey,
Hey,
career
so I have
threat.
a couple of things.
Oh,
I have a couple of things. Hey, Ed, did you ever watch that video that I sent you of Jeff Zeig telling the story
oh
of
yes.
Milton Erickson convincing
Uh-huh.
him not to smoke a pipe in a single conversation?
I do. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story. I sent Ed the YouTube video for that one time, and I was partially bringing it up just to raise his awareness of the hypnotherapy that took place for Jeff Zeig and make it a little awkward for Ed with his pipe. But I can't pull off the Erickson level um, uh, subconscious, unconscious intervention to that degree. But
Yeah,
you should
many
look
have
it up.
tried.
Not with that shirt.
No, yeah, no, definitely. So the go back to the idea of trauma versus stress we were talking about. I thought I was having earlier. It came out of the righteous mind, because not everybody's in full agreement about like how like attachment theory. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but we might all be able to agree on the concept of the elephant and the rider from the righteous mind, where you basically your subcortical emotional responses to stimuli, you're either basically engaged and plugged in, you're leaning toward, as he describes in that book, or you're leaning away. And I think one thing that happens with something like a betrayal in a affair would be that your steady state in that relationship was to be leaned toward the other person in reliance on the other person, and that relationship is a protective factor against a lot of other things. You're actually getting secondary, tertiary benefits out of that relationship. And then the safety, the unguardedness that you're able to possess, all of a sudden you lose as a result of that betrayal, and you get shifted into the steady state of leaning away. But it's also a loss. There's grief involved in that. Um, I watched and moral self-injury ties into that. One of the best marital therapy cases I ever helped with was a couple like 250-pound. No, sorry, that's an probably 280-pound rancher type dude who broke down crying in my office when we were. I had him grab toys. They were really really stuck in tight quick cycles of escalating conflict. So I had them choose toys to represent the emotional states, primary and secondary emotional states that they were caught in. And it slowed the interaction down where they couldn't just talk at each other. They had to like, I had to look at, they had to look at the toy and manipulate the toy in the floor, and then the other the other partner, whoever wasn't moving the items at that time, was then kind of passing that communication leg through the toy as well to try to understand. And we got it slowed down enough that he was able to realize, like, I violated and betrayed myself because I had this identity as a loving husband, as a protector, as a faithful spiritual man, leader in the church, and I killed that. Moral self-injury. Moral self-injury is an underestimated problem in a lot of situations, be it combat trauma, be it affairs, emotional affairs, betrayal. That's all a really big deal. Something else I want to mention, like I found a few resources in the education world that I didn't know about in the therapy world, and one of them is called the Search Institute's 40 Developmental Assets. Have y'all ever heard of that before?
No.
Great resource when working with kids. It's really designed for educators, but all the information is free on the Search Institute's website. And so it's a list of 40 factors that produce mental health in children. If they possess them when they're young, then they have much better mental health outcomes when they have grown up. And so I'd encourage anybody listening to this podcast to just go check that out. It's a great resource. It's out there. It's free.
I want to jump on you kind of delineating some of the morally injurious things between like combat trauma and betrayal, because yes, sometimes it's the literal killing that causes the moral injury, but most of the cases are a betrayal, like a commanding officer ordered them to do something, or
Mm-hmm.
they were sexually assaulted by somebody who they were trained to trust with their life to their
Mm-hmm.
left and to their right. So a lot of times it's actually not the obvious, the clear cut of I killed a person. It's often that but kind of what you're saying. It's not like
Yeah.
the very things that even civilians, children, uh, victims of community violence might experience.
Yeah. No, that's a
I'm
great
hoping
point.
I'm hoping to build off of something the people's therapist said about resilience and what y'all's opinions are about post-traumatic growth. Because I'm big on empowerment and how we can kind of see the positive and direct towards a better future. What do you think about post-traumatic growth coming out of these experiences? And does that differ based on severe trauma like military combat versus things that are high distress but low like physical impact, if that makes sense?
This is my
52% of people
dissertation,
who
so I'll actually stay quiet.
It's his
52% of people
dissertation.
who experience traumatic disturbance will self-report experiencing post-traumatic growth either during or after the experience of recovery from a traumatic disturbance. This is something that I put in all my trauma training slides for educators. I ran across some research that talked about trigger warnings, and trigger warnings actually cause the same problem
Worse.
I was hinting at earlier, which is
Mm-hmm.
you start to develop a traumatized identity when you start dropping trigger warnings in front of people who have actually been through traumatic disturbance. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm not doing trigger warnings anymore. So what am I going to do instead? I'm going to do hope-focused trauma recovery facts. And that 52% statistic is one of them. Another one is 75% of people who endure traumatic disturbance will go on to make a full recovery or achieve remission of PTSD without external support.
Mhm.
So we're thankfully obsolete for a lot of people whose natural healing capacity will take over and help them.
Absolutely.
Go back to that Search Institute idea. There's one point that I didn't reconnect for us is Jake talked about resilience. Protective factors are fuel for resilience. So they're not
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same thing, but they're the foundation of resilience. So we build protective factors, resilience follows.
What helped me the most was Megadeth.
Excellent.
Hello, me, meet the real me with my Misfits way of life. So when I went to Afghanistan and learned that I was not just your standard run of the mill good Mormon boy, and I could do horrifying things on behalf of the people, it took me a while to adapt to the fact that I could do horrifying things on behalf of the people for the people. And so in my life post Marine Corps, whether it be corporate America or the world that I'm living in now, there's been times that it's like this book, Snakes in Suits, psychopaths in corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
Stupid psychopaths end up in prison. Smart psychopaths end up running every institution that we live in.
Well, they make great middle managers. They're hatchet men. They're like, oh, I
Phenomenal.
just got a second mortgage and my wife is pregnant. I don't care. Get out.
And don't say that, because my nickname in one of my companies was Hatchet Man. Because, well, but this
Was
was
it because you were so understanding and empathetic?
Yes.
Well, so Adam, I don't know how you explain this, but leadership, once they got to know me, they were able to say, hey, things are great, you're running great teams, great departments. This fucker over here, this like manager over here, he has been a shit show for 5 years, nothing but problems, nothing but lawsuits, nothing but sexual harassment accusations, but nothing that we could ever bring. We could never get him. And I'm like, all right, I'm the bulldog, call me, bark, bark, here I come. And I would take these guys out again and again and again. I would just saddle up to them and I would create the bill of goods necessary to remove them from the ecosystem. And so what I had to do, and I was looking on my Jung section, is the integration of the shadow. I had to Patrick, don't shake your head at me about Jung. My God.
Did Dr. Perry just hear you reference Jung? Is a fight about to break
I'm
out?
actually thinking he's taking a page from the Roman McClay section. I see that sanction the book. Mr. Payne demands a response.
Listen, I don't even get me started on what happened with that man. My God,
I know what happened with that man.
I know.
Oh God, he's doing restarted.
That fucker was so goddamn smart, and he had no right to do what he did. It makes me so upset. The writing is incredible. Like, God, that makes me sad. That's the shadow, though. I mean, God, we read these things through history, and you're like, you read it, and you're like, my word, what inspired this? And yet, then you learn about the person, and you're like, what happened there? Anyway, in what I had to integrate coming from Marine Corps Afghanistan into civilian life was an integration between who I thought I was versus who I learned that I could do. And there had to be a happy overlap, but without destruction. And what I find with a lot of veterans is they destroy themselves because it's like a disintegration. And that's why I bring up my boy Jung, because it does seem that there is some sort of shadow. And I know Ed and I know Patrick are rolling their eyes at me. I don't care.
No,
about
I'm
that.
agreeing with you, actually.
Okay, perfect. But
the thing about this is he got it from Sabrina Spielren, so it's great that you're doing great Sabrina Spielren stuff. So yeah, please continue.
Sabrina, the teenage witch, cool. Jung. Anyway,
Yes.
So I don't know who Sabrina is.
He was a young student who he slept with, and then actually his
Me?
patient who he slept with, then his student who he slept with. Then she went and she wrote a lot of psychoanalytic papers, and then he
Yes, she
took
did.
those ideas and had them published. And it's
The
a whole thing.
ethics were different back then, guys. I'm just gonna say.
Well,
Yeah,
you know,
you used to be able to get high with
his
your
wife
patients,
was
you know?
rich, so she had to pay for people to give him ideas.
Sounds like he integrated something.
That's an accusation.
Have
He
you
was
worked
actually
in your
quite
resentment towards Jung?
No. He was brilliant. He was just a dork.
A nut job. He's a
Dirty
nut job.
dog.
Dirty
There's so
dog.
many.
Dr. Lockwood.
Yeah, I think so many things to say. First and foremost, I love the idea of integrating whatever parts might be necessary to integrate.
Oh, I am
He's so diplomatic. He's so diplomatic.
I couldn't help myself. God bless Richard Swartz. May he
well done.
blessed be upon him, or whatever you said, Jake.
Peace be upon him.
I think
Peace be
some of
upon
the
him.
spirits that live inside me are angry at this insinuation. That are real. They're not metaphorical. They're real spirits.
They're
that are
real
happening.
spirits.
Oh,
yes,
Lord.
it's my inner firefighter or whatever.
Do
so
psychoanalytic people look at IFS like the JV team of depth psychology?
no, Schwartz admits it's all psychodynamic.
All right.
He knows. He just doesn't
it's
talk
this
about it.
idea of you take one thing, and it's like if you look at if you imagine a tree with a big trunk and a root, it's like one leaf. Oh, here's one thing. Let me make an entire career, an entire theory out of one leaf.
Out of
I
context,
hated No
also.
Bad Parts.
Okay,
Hated it.
the boys
Yeah.
in the Signal chat know every chance I get, I send them this ratchet rap song called "Make His Pockets Hurt." Because of that, it's like it's just one slight little growth out that people make an entire career out of, and I have such a hard time with that. But
And
it's a
Dr.
great
that
Lockwood.
rap
actually,
song.
like,
Oh,
that speaks
yeah.
to a lot of the industry, though, of like, it's plagiarism to the 9th degree. And it's interesting because a lot of times it's actually focused on the clinician trying to exalt themselves, right? So like, how much is it actually helping people? That's a crazy thing. We do a lot of studies and research and publish things just because we're trying to prove points that aren't necessarily poignant to the end users. Like that's the whole like trauma. When we go back to the word trauma, I also think the largest demographic of the traumatized are actually the like second generation trauma, the secondary traumas, right? A lot of times it's not even their experience, it's just they're being taught about the boogeyman, right? Like they're told like, oh, this is the thing that's going to kill you. It's the reason why so many people say, oh wow, white nationalists are the number one deadliest thing in America right now. It's come out, it sounds scary, and then I believe it. And then you end up with clients that are 50, 60, 70 years old and recognize their whole lives have essentially been them navigating boogeyman stories that were shared with them, but that they never directly experienced.
It's not intergenerational trauma, it's family homeostasis.
Well, as you guys have noticed on my Twitter, I'm very like just run of the mill, but sometimes I team up with these dissident types. And you know, there's this one individual, Kayla, that talks about Black relations within the Black community, and then Black relations in the white community. And it's such a great, how she does it is such a great breakdown about, yeah, white people have done some bad things to Black people in America. Cool. But what are Black people doing to Black people right now? And the hate and discontent she gets, it's incredible. But to your point, Adam, it's like a lot of the people that come in and argue against her, it's not. And she asks them, what have you specifically individually experienced? And they can't answer it. They say, no, 200 years ago, allegedly this happened. And she says, no, you personally, what is holding you back right now? You as an individual, and the rage they fall into. But it's such a useful approach or tool for what we do, to ask somebody, okay, your mom sucked, your dad sucked. Sorry about that. Your grandpa sucked. What are you doing? Like, what are your habits of action? And Patrick, this is why I appreciate your Twitter feed. That's so simply matter of fact, rational, do happy things, have great sex, have great workouts, have great food, have great sleep, not in that order, but do those things and your life, maybe in that order, but like, what in your life will not be fundamentally improved by just doing that? And, you know, you're so polite and diplomatic that when you get dipshits that come after you, like, ah, that's fucking stupid, you're a goddamn dumbass, you are like, well, I'm not talking to you. I will talk to them. I will. That's me. That's what I am. That's why Jesus invented Jake. But it's such a great approach to be able to address and say, what specifically is happening to you outside of history? And it changes lives. It really does. Anyway.
So hey, let me jump in the middle and bring it back to Scott D. Miller that I referenced, because I realized I didn't finish my thought earlier, way back at the beginning. So Scott D. Miller connects back into this discussion of what Adam was just saying, because so he researches clinical effectiveness, therapeutic effectiveness. I'm going to upset all the apple carts right now. What he showed from his outfit's research is that modality selection does not have a significant impact on therapeutic outcome, and that scares some people. But that ties into Adam's thought about, you know, the way things are in this industry. If we're being really honest about what IFS is, this is Jonathan's interpretation of IFS. By the way, I've been practicing IFS, I'll confess, for 18 years, however long since I graduated. My program picked it up way early on because he's a marriage and family therapist. Schwartz is a marriage and family therapist.
What part of you was reluctant to tell us?
Well, the part that realizes that I'm alone in this audience, but I decided to go ahead and put it out there.
I tease. I'm a huge fan of Gestalt psychotherapy. I've studied sociometry, psychodrama.
Yeah.
There's so much overlap. Art and movement therapy. I'm not.
For sure.
I'll tease. I'm irreverent, but I'm not really going to be like, that's the bad one.
It's a useful
that's
metaphor.
The one that harms people.
It is.
It's a useful metaphor.
It's and I've used it to great positive effect. I've seen clients achieve full remission of suicidal ideation in a single session using the visualization part of the IFS intervention, which I'm not even sure if Schwartz realized. He was tapping into Ericksonian therapy at that time. He didn't talk about that at that time, but that's really, you're doing some at least light trance work when you were doing the visualization exercises.
But that's the leaf. Every couple decades, people rediscover something. They might repackage it. Sometimes they're really good at explaining it, so they create a new metaphor, or they put it in a new package that's easily digestible. But it's not new. It's not unlike anything that we've seen before.
For sure. The so there it is not new. Absolutely agree. And trying to learn more, like I've told all y'all before, I didn't get any psychodynamic, psychoanalytic training, you know, nothing that came before Gregory Bateson. And so I'm trying to branch out and become a better discussion participant with you guys who are better versed in that. And you're right. It's not there. It's many things aren't new. There's like a new synthesis of combinations of ideas, but we're not discovering new avenues for intervention really at this point. So, um, go back to Scott D. Miller. What he found is it's therapeutic modality selection doesn't matter. The only, in terms of outcome, the only therapist controlled factor that matters is the therapist's ability to form a connection with the client. That's the therapist controlled factor. And that therapists who do well at that and who regularly have conversations with their clients, some semi-formal assessment with their clients about the client's perception of the effectiveness of the relationship are up to 14 times more effective than
Yeah.
therapists who do not do those things.
And
Absolutely.
Jonathan, you're saying that people don't do that? Because like every session or second session, I'm like, I ask them, how's it going? Like, is this working? Is this
Whoa,
doing
whoa, whoa, whoa.
it?
No, sorry. We're on week 2 of the manual. We can't talk about that. Here's the worksheet.
Oh, we
Yeah.
got to take shots at CBT, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and
Yeah.
somewhat
I
fairly
can't
for
even
being
spell
reductionistic
CBT.
in some ways. Yeah. So what I wish, this is the thought I didn't finish. What I wish I had known better. I wish I understood his research better when I was in grad school, because we were using his outcome rating scale and session rating scale
Yeah.
in grad school, and I had no
Yeah.
idea what for. That was never laid out clearly and plainly, but that's part of that formula of having regular discussion where you're doing a Likert scale with the client about the session rating, the outcome, what are your outcomes like, and what's your reaction to this individual session. It amps the effectiveness of the sessions when you do that.
Yep.
Look,
I've
yeah,
personally
go ahead,
found
Ed.
every time there is a rift or difficulty or plateau in a psychotherapy, it's because the therapist and the client aren't on the same page as to what the purpose of the therapy is. So some degree of checking in, whether it's a formal measurement system or even if it's a matter of what are like what would you like to get out of the work? Have we reached this goal? What would you like to continue working on in the future? As a way of going, are we on the same page? Like, are we working towards the same thing? And that to me, I think, does about 90% of that kind of work.
I
think
I wrote Jonathan, was that you? Go. I've
Mm-mm.
talked so much.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wrote an article that I didn't publish a long time ago that trying to conceptualize, because I think ancient societies that I've seen across the world had a lot figured out that we're trying to rediscover how that works, particularly like almost an aristocratic class, a worker class, warrior class, shamanic class. And I
Like a
think,
caste system.
well, I mean, if you wish, but it's like how these different societies across the world and across
Division of
time,
labor.
yeah, unrelated. It's just kind of how they just and we've gotten rid of religion as a institution largely, and in the absence of it, it hasn't, like, people just haven't filled themselves with freedom. Not everybody. And I think therapy is kind of
Jonathan's filled
filling
with freedom.
that. I
Amen.
know, you can tell, but
he is freedom.
with shit. And so with the therapist class, I take for granted that people are coming to me for meaning. And so I tell them, I'm like, look, you got to look at me as some sort of shamanic wizard therapist dude, that let's agree upon what we want to do together. And we'll go through the process and I'll take you there, but you may not like it while we're doing it because it's going to suck. And if it doesn't suck, we're probably not doing it right. But you have to trust the process. And I'm going to check in with you. Can you handle the pain? Because early in my career, I pushed people too hard, too fast, and they broke out. They flamed out, split out, however you want to say it.
The therapeutic temperature, too hot. Too hot to affect change.
Can you imagine that I could do that, Ed?
And so you can't be too cold either, but some people go too hot, some people go too cold.
most people to
Metaphorically.
go too cold in this modern thing. Not Jonathan with his safety dance, but anyway, just getting their permission early on.
Sorry,
So full
Ed.
of freedom.
Ed invited me with that comment. My apologies. I'm propping right now.
Never apologize
get it-
for your freedom.
getting their permission.
Those colors
early
don't
on,
run.
We're gonna go.
Are we
and I will
propping? I
lead
came
them.
prepared for propping too. Give me
Oh
a second.
yes. Sorry, the people's therapist. It's prop time.
Yes.
Oh, what is this?
It's his Garand. He said he was going to bring it.
Nice.
Wow.
Look at that sexy
Yes.
piece
That's
of
an
ass.
expensive piece. I love
Holy
that.
shit.
My grandfather shot Nazis with it. It didn't cost me a thing.
Wow.
Shit. Is that for real?
Oh yeah.
Dude,
That
is
is
so much money in
that's
your hand.
amazing.
That's sexual chocolate, as the people's therapist says.
You know what else
Yes.
people shot Nazis with?
30 out 6.
1911.
Not that particular one,
Not
but yes.
this. No, this is not your granddaddy's 1911. There's one other not your granddaddy's 1911 floating around somewhere.
Yeah,
I wonder
recently
where.
There's
bestowed.
something in this case right here. If you can see this, get the light off.
I love that.
That's
Yeah.
exquisite.
And,
I
I
will
have
say-
I have my great granddaddy's 1911 that he shot pre-Nazi Germans with.
Yes.
Nice. Kaiser.
can we
Vintage.
see this here?
I'll bring that in the next one. Ooh, what is that?
There's another. It's not
Is that
your
a dueling
granddaddy's
pistol?
1911.
Ooh.
Kimber.
Yeah, pull it out of the box so everybody can see.
Yeah, I was about to say it's not coming in too big. Let's see it.
Yeah, let's see the whole thing. All right.
Ooh.
Have you shot it?
I have not.
Wait, you've had it in your possession for more than a day and you haven't shot it yet? Are you really from Texas?
That's
Just
a
pop
fair
two
point.
right out the window. It's normal. Pow pow. For
Yeah,
kids, any kids watching, don't
Don't
do
do
that
that ever.
That's
Ever.
that was a joke.
Ever.
Does he deserve friends like us? I mean, I'm asking.
I don't.
Yeah, so that was for the viewing audience, that was Ryan's graduation present from the
Mhm.
2A therapy bros, as I guess I would informally call us. Some of the guys who were on this call, plus Jake Wiskirchen, who was not on this call, just kind of got together and picked that out. And it met all the criteria of being something in the line that Ryan wanted, which I had to suss out low key to try to not tip him off of what we were doing, and it met the leather and steel and wood and oil requirements of Career Flex up here,
That's
and all the other preferences, and so and everybody ought to have a 1911. I'm just gonna say it's just like
That's right.
it's a classic car of firearms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. Much appreciated.
For sure.
Okay, so we interrupted Career Flex. So hey, you want to jump back, Jake, where you were
I
at?
I can always talk if it's my turn or if it's not my turn. But does anybody else have things to say?
Go ahead.
I don't even remember where I was, but let me look at props and I can just talk.
You're talking about meaning. Wait. You were talking about meaning, and let me say something real quick.
Yes,
So
please.
you had a really good thought that I think is worth dissecting for people. I actually just had this conversation with my old man, who's a shrink, and he was
Your
surprised by
father.
my definition. My old man. Unfortunately, that's how I got here.
I'm so
And-
sorry.
Which is how all of us got here, by the way. Our old man.
It's
But,
Our
true.
parents.
Yeah,
We
Freud's
came
got
from their
stronger.
parts.
I know. So
Okay, as you're injected into this life, now you're
So-
here. Okay, go on.
So there's this interesting thing that I think, or to me, it's interesting because it works reliably, and that's why it's interesting. Because what's reliable is fascinating. What's not reliable is boring. So this dude that I've been reading for a long time. Everyone know who Gordon Allport is? Or one of the original personality therapists or personality theorists, right? So like, there's this really long tradition in personality psychology, which I didn't know much about until about 5 years ago. But some of the pieces of temperament that we've all heard Jordan Peterson talk about, right? So the big five and all this stuff, it's actually way more reliable than even he makes it out to be. He actually undersells it, which is something that I could never imagine Jordan Peterson doing because he's pretty good at overselling things. No shade. But it's fascinating how certain things are more predictive across time and circumstance and traumatic stress and all these things. And so if we're talking about what's meaningful to people, something I just like to put out on the practical side of things, kind of like how Jonathan was putting out the practical website too. I think, if you're looking for a more simple formula, notwithstanding the complexities of being a person, what's meaningful is going to be some weird combination of how your behavior matches with your personality, which matches with your values. And so if you can line those three things up consistently across situations, you'll be fine. And you'll have a perfectly meaningful existence, even in small things, but also in big, difficult circumstances and big, great circumstances. And I think one thing that's missing in today's culture is a very practical conversation around not being miserable. And I can't imagine why we focus so much on feeling good. That seems like an absurd goal to me, and for various reasons. And it's so weird how people would like to talk about their values sometimes, but never talk about their personality. It seems like it's completely absent, even in therapy land, the world's worst theme park. Talking about personality is completely.
Or they're trying to get rid of
verboten.
it. Like,
I know.
people think personality means personality disorder, and so let's get rid of all. Let's throw all the baby out with the bathwater.
Absurd. And I just can't imagine having a meaningful life based upon my clinical work, but also my consulting work and just my personal life. Like, if I didn't try to orient myself in the world based upon how I'm built, I would be miserable. I would absolutely be miserable. And I just can't imagine the people who are like, everything is so fungible and postmodern and everything, I can be different in different circumstances. Like, no, you can't. You can't.
Or the Stoic saying, it doesn't matter if I'm compatible. I just have to do it. I just have to white knuckle it. And then they're miserable and they're on their third divorce and their second heart attack.
But they've got the right Marcus Aurelius book sitting on their bookshelf like I do.
Me too.
Oh yeah, meditations. I got it too. Great on audiobook too.
What one of the questions, and I tend to get these clients sent to me that have been in therapy for like 7, 8, 9 years to no effect. And they come to me and it's like an earth-shattering experience because I ask them a question very early, like first, second session, who are you? Like ergodisically, who are you? Despite space and time, pressure and stress and whatever the fuckery that's been done, at your core, who are you? And 99% of the time they have no idea.
Yeah.
And so we have to dig pretty deep pretty quick and figure out at their core, what do they hate? Because via negativa, like what they're not is what they are, right? And so once they figure out the core of what they will never tolerate, and it usually comes back, I'm sad Adam's gone, but what their mother did to them and their father, but mostly their mother, we build out from that. And once we can figure out who they are, the ergodisic nature of who they are, all of a sudden their values come into sharp relief.
Yeah.
And that this is why they hate their job. And this is why they hate their wife. And this is why they hate their kids. Not that they hate their wife or kids, but it's the relation that they have with them. Okay. Yes. So start interacting with them different. And all of a sudden they have a whole new wife and kids. And so Patrick, what you said struck me is that how many of these therapists never, ever ask, who are you? What are you about? Why are you here? Why does it matter? It's just a weekly conversation forever until we all die or until the credit card runs out. I can't imagine that. Why would we do that?
There's just too much flexibility in the sense of, you're always changing and blah, 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 which is true. That's the JFK quote, change is the law of life or whatever. But the truth of the matter is certain things certainly change, especially your circumstances. But you, as an individual, you're not going to change drastically, across various parts of your more core you're not going to go from the 85th percentile of trait openness to the 5th percentile unless you have serious brain damage.
Which is also not possible. A suggestion.
I don't suggest that.
So don't just blast your head. Okay, got it.
So this is an area like I can just kind of add a little bit to this part of the discussion. I think a lot of this ties into the modern versus postmodern concept of how the world works in general, modernity versus postmodernity. I came into training for therapy at a time where there was still enough modernity hanging on in my trainers that I got a really good, strong, healthy sense of that. Like there are objective truths and natural laws that govern the functioning of everything. And we didn't get into personality psychology much at all, but the idea of personality was definitely expressed. And back when I was in school, I think I was very idealistic, and I really believed like, hey, yeah, I think you can change yourself drastically, like you can change your personality over time. More in the direction of what Patrick was just talking about, like, large swings in percentiles. I don't believe that anymore.
Yeah.
Both because of reading some of the research that you guys and others have connected me with, but just from clinical experience and general life experience, having been trained in as an observer of people, and then reconnecting with this idea of, yeah, there is objective truth and natural law that governs functioning, and it makes sense from a functional standpoint to not change that radically over time. That doesn't make sense across the human population. It doesn't make sense from an energy expenditure standpoint, which we're constantly trying to conserve energy with so many of our behaviors.
Yeah.
And so there's and probably other reasons you guys can think of, but I'll confess that's a belief shift that I've adopted myself. Like, yeah, we're not going to totally change who we are. Expression of who we are sometimes, but not who we are.
Yeah.
If I may, I just realized I've got an assumption that may no longer be true. But when I was really studying into it about, changing who we are, the idea was that we're, 50-ish% nature, 50% nurture. You can't really change the nature. That's what it is. The nurture part, yes, but good luck. And the
What are
idea
you
at the
talking about
time,
with Wegovy or what is it, Ozempic? I'm changing. People can change their people can
No,
change their people can
in a
change
couple
their
of weeks,
nature.
it's easy. Just watch my
So
TikTok.
get some peptides.
That's right.
Subscribe.
Yes.
Samorlin. Yeah.
But
Jeez,
basically,
I actually don't know what any of these brands are.
I'm
for
not.
the, for,
I'm not the.
for the nature part, 10 years was what I was given of really hard, dedicated work and therapy. You might be able to change the 50% part that you can, which a 50% change in a system is fundamental change. So can you change yourself? Yes. 100% of it? No. A lot of it? Yes. Over a long time with a lot of work? Yes. Are most people willing to do that? No.
Well, do
I
they
don't know
need
if
to do
that's
that?
what's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Or do they even need to do that?
Well,
Right.
and you bring up a point. I have people come to me that their life has been a soup sandwich for forever. And and I like to do chronologies because I use whiteboards in my office. I got a big 3x5 whiteboard, and we chronologize like everything that they've ever done or not done. And it ultimately comes down to they're like, no, I'm 100% a piece of shit. I'm just a piece of shit. I can't, blah, 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 which obviously is not true. Like they would be dead. Like if they
Yeah.
were not good at being alive. And so it's like, okay, no, it looks like you're like 90% pretty good at things. And there's about 10% of it that keeps kicking you in your own nutsack.
Yeah.
What if we stop kicking you in your own nutsack? Like they're substantial. Like you can't keep stepping on a rake and expect to have a pretty nose if that's what you want, right? And so we get it down over sessions into what is the 10% that we're really looking at? Because the 90% we got it. It's done. We don't need to worry about that. And and the effect it has on people is like, wow, I'm not a piece of shit. I'm just a little bit goofy on 10%. Okay, that's easy. 10%'s easy. We can all do 10% of change if we need to. Anyway, that's what I do.
Well, I
Yeah.
like the word development over change because we can't necessarily change our personality so much as we can't like if you look at it kind of like a constellation of different factors, you might be able to lower the intensity or you might change some things, but that
Right.
constellation may stay a little may be a little bit consistent. But
Yeah.
if you put effort in, or if you even know your nature very well, you can learn
Mm.
how to lean on your strengths a little bit more, compensate for your weaknesses a little bit better. But again, this is
Mhm.
why I prefer the term development. Like there is like you could work at it and you can make some adjustments, but it's not like I've gone from the good range to the bad range, or I went from the good zone to the bad zone.
Yeah.
So that's why I like you
If
Yeah.
that
10
made
pound
any
brain
sense.
boys with these PhDs, all these
I,
words.
I was chatting with Patrick on his podcast this last Saturday, and the example
Oh,
came
yeah.
up of being. I had parental examples of a lot of conflict avoidance, and I married a
Mm.
very high conflict spouse, like high conflict history. And I was really, I didn't understand these terms at that time. I was really strongly defended against my own anger
Mm.
or aggression, and I had to integrate anger and aggression because it turns out you need anger and aggression to do things sometimes, like confront people, set emotional boundaries, tell people no, and that was a developmental pathway I had not followed, but that I had to locate, identify, and pursue, and it did change the expression of my personality as other people observe it, as my wife observed it. But it didn't. It's still consistent with my values, as Patrick was talking about,
Yeah.
and it fits with what Ed was just saying about it's a part of a developmental trajectory. Not everybody may follow that who was maybe defended against their aggression. That also ties back into the idea that Ed started out talking about today. Is like you may have somebody who's defended against their own aggression. It's not producing a huge impairment problem in their life, but it is a potential arc of growth for them.
Or they may not need a
Absolutely.
DSM diagnosis.
Mm.
Yeah.
Check
That happens
check
all the time.
Clinical.
I think
Yeah.
Clinical
an
is right.
interesting question to pose to you gentlemen is, would you ever fire, so to speak, fire a client because you thought they were doing too well?
Yeah. Without hesitation. So long as
Ideally,
everything.
I'd have a conversation about it, but yes.
Yes. Yeah. So long as they have actually met the goals they agreed to. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, Patrick, I've had 2 clients in 3 years where I've told them, like, look, dude, I don't know what to do with you anymore because you're doing really fucking good. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
We're meeting it for an hour every week. Like, why?
But that's
Like,
an
you-
intervention.
Yeah.
Why are you still coming in here when you're well?
Yeah.
Not you're fired.
They're being
Yeah.
kinky.
So the phrasing might cause some discontent for some people on
With
the panel,
me?
but the principle is correct, which is we had I did this 2 weeks ago. I have, I think, 3 private practice people in my life. That's it. I don't do a lot of therapy. I refuse. However, the one guy I did just fire last week, but we had a set of mutually negotiated conversations for the prior month about how his depression has improved, what his goals were, conflict with his wife, managing his mood, all these things. And so over the span of a month, we were tracking progress and how well things are going and where he wants to go. And then last week, I said, okay, so we've been talking about this. How are we actually doing? What do you think we have to work on? And he said, I don't know. And I said, great. What do you think we could work on? And he said, I don't know. I said, okay, given all the things that we've discussed since we've been meeting, what else do you think we need to work on given the things we've discussed working on together? And he said, I don't think anything because the relationship with my wife is good. Relationship with my son is good. My mood is managed. I'm doing more social things. I'm taking, like, he's doing all the boxes, checking all the boxes for his depression management, if you want to call it that. And so
Yeah.
3
completed
months
a
of
course
doing
of
really
therapy.
good. Yeah. And now he knows that if he wants to come back, he certainly can, So that's an example.
That's often the escape hatch I think you have to drop in there, that it's beneficial to drop in there, is the okay, let's you're maintaining the desired change that we set out to achieve.
Yeah.
And so let's cut it back to every other week and see if you still maintain. Okay, let's cut it back to once a month and see if you still maintain. Okay, we've been gone a month. Anything popping up that that you couldn't handle on your own? No. Okay. Let me tell you also about. Do any of you guys have a graduation ritual or a parting ritual for clients whenever they leave? Okay,
No.
I'm
so
not the best at it. I know some people, they'll like do handwritten notes or they'll do transitional objects. That's not
I did a
really my
transitional
style.
object,
At
and
the center,
I'm
we
really
pass around a chip.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah. Well,
says
that
Yeah,
something
yeah.
about him. Yeah.
makes perfect sense. So the practice that I worked in was called Turning Point when I was doing my full-time private practice gig, and I found a online outfit that would do engraved river stones,
Mm.
and I had the river stones engraved with the phrase "From beyond the turning point."
Mm.
And I had like a little parting speech, graduation speech that I just don't like the term discharge or
Well, I don't like the word
termination.
termination because I think that came out before the Schwarzenegger movie. So now every time I hear that, I think of
Yes.
robots with glowing eyes and laser beams.
Yeah,
I just watched the
exactly.
second one last night. It was great.
Yeah, great
It
movie.
is
But
one of
that's
the
why
best
I
movies.
giggle every time I say, "Oh, I think it's about time for termination." I'm
Yep.
like,
Dun, dun,
So
dun.
I
I
just
just call him
just
GTFO.
exactly. So I just say that because I was using the term graduation. That was my
Mm.
interchangeable term. Hey, you're graduating from this process. You have achieved. And so I had these river stones that said "From beyond the turning point," and I had this speech that I worked up over a couple of times of doing it that went something like this. You came here however long ago to set out to work on the goal XYZ, and we're standing here on this trail that we have walked miles and miles down, and it may not have even seemed like we were getting very far, but if we look
Mm.
back down the trail to where we began, it's a huge accumulation of miles that you have achieved through your effort in the process. And so I'm giving you this river stone, and we could imagine that this river stone is something that we picked up from the trail beside where we're standing right now,
Mm.
that is symbolic of our parting of ways, that is also representative whenever you see this object of the incredible mileage of progress that you've accumulated through your effort. And then I'd hand the stone across. And just adding that little extra point on there about I want it to remind you of your success. And if you, I would often toss in there too, if you find yourself like dealing with some of the same problems and struggles and emotions, I want you to go and look at the stone and remember what it represents. And in my mind, what I'm thinking is that may be a step that keeps them from feeling like they have to come back, because they've realized, oh yes, I've already learned to climb this rock face, and there's no reason I can't regain what I had in a short time. And that's something that I would encourage anybody out there to think about, is some kind of ritual that might help cement that change and give the client or patient something symbolic of what's been achieved. Because when they're finishing therapy, man, that's huge. It's
"That's
amazing.
beautiful."
It's celebratory.
You should
Yeah,
let me
it's very
know
nice.
where you get that engraved. I'll get Worried Well engraved so I can say you don't need therapy anymore.
You are now worried well.
Uh-huh.
Take this. If anybody pisses you off, just take this and throw it at them. That'll
Nice.
If anyone says you don't deserve
Nice.
therapy, you can just talk your Worried
Yes.
Well token at them.
Do y'all, how big do
Exactly.
you think the risk is for people who lean on the therapist as a crutch, kind of as like a proxy for a friend?
Or a parent.
What?
Or a
What
parent,
risk
big
are you
league.
risk
Ooh,
risk
yeah.
of what? Risk of what specifically?
Outsourcing your emotional regulation and cognitive functioning.
Yeah, but like what is the specific consequence of doing that? Because as Ed would probably agree, like sometimes people come to therapy because they're learning how to do that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if somebody's like uncertain of how to navigate interpersonal relationships, going to therapy could help for sure. But at some
Yeah.
point, you have to kind of pass that baton to where your friends and family are meeting those needs. Because a therapist is not an actual friend. They're a paid
Mhm.
professional. They're not going to come to your birthday party and think, you know what I mean? Like, eventually that relationship has to look very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Patrick really highlighted a lot of the nuance, which is missing from a discussion if we just delineate. This is the worried well, this is the ones who need therapy, or these are the bad therapists who aren't actually doing help, they're just the paid friend. And these are the good therapists who are doing the change interventions and the ones that are working. It's not a line. And on one side, it's the right one. And on the other side, it's the wrong one. It's a gradient. And in many ways, it's a very individual, like to the who's actually sitting in front of you. What are your
Yeah.
goals? Is this something realistic that can be done in therapy? How far have we gone in the pursuit of that goal? These are now discussions. These are now things that you collaborate with your patient.
Yeah.
It's not
So
yeah.
I just want to know specifically, is the consequence never ever having a relationship with a friend again? Is that what you're worried about? Or is the consequence something like, could have more friends right now as opposed to 3 months from now or as opposed to 6 months from now? And I don't know how you do that predictive math personally.
I think part of it is mistaking a professional relationship for like a deep friendship.
Okay, so if your therapist has shitty insight, then of course they're going to treat you like a friend. And as Dr. Perrin famously says, therapy is the worst way to treat a friend, or whatever the quote is.
Good saying.
That's a
Good saying.
terrible way to treat a friend.
Yeah, it's a terrible way to treat a friend.
I was
And
going to whisper into the mic, uncontroversial.
So for me,
Tell your
it's just
friends
kind of
the
like
truth.
it's. I just think like I don't really worry about that, even though I'm very anti having the worried well in therapy. I think that Ed and I are actually much closer than maybe our online conversation would dictate.
Oh, the
Because
online conversation is just for sensationalism.
Just
you
for
and I
fun,
are
yeah,
very aligned on a lot of
I
things.
think
don't tell the secret.
unfortunately,
I think
for everyone, we're much more aligned.
I think this crew of therapists is very high quality, like above average for sure. But I hear so many stories of, I was trauma bonding with my therapist and, things like that, where it's like, it seems like there's a lot of professional boundaries being crossed or gray areas. Is this making sense?
Yeah, well,
People's therapist.
Hey, my intro to this fucking industry was the initial clinical supervisor I had was just wrong, as in year over year over year of seeing people, but she was a very much on the affirmation validation side of therapy, where everything they said or did was affirmed and validated. They're never because of her caseload, ultimately she started sending people over to me, and I got fired initially from that initial internship, because I would meet with these people and I would ask them, like, why would you do that? Like,
Yeah.
you described to me that you knew the outcome would be bad of, like, dating this tattooed guy that just got out of prison, like, true story, and you knew the outcome would be bad because you had done it
Mhm.
before. Why would you
Yeah.
do that? And
Yeah.
and they were like, oh, girls, nobody's ever asked me that before. I've been going to therapy for 7 years. Nobody's actually asked me why I'm doing what I'm doing. And breakdown, like existential breakdown on the couch. And I'm like, tissues. And then we had to talk about, like, their values and why and blah, blah, blah. And they would go back to this supervisor and say, I have gotten more life back in my control in the 3 months I've worked with Jake than the 7 years I worked with you.
Mhm.
Now, if one of my subordinates came to me and said that, I'd be like, holy fuck, great, let's do that. Let me go learn from that guy. Her response was, we got to get rid of this dude. This is toxic masculinity and white supremacy. Literally, that's what the accusation. I mean, like,
Toxic masculinity was
out of this book.
making you too effective.
Well, it's
Yes.
like, sure,
Yeah,
if that is asking people straight questions, cool.
But
Yeah.
so like what you're saying confirms why I have my podcast on Saturdays. So the average
I show up
person
even
who,
in elk camp.
yeah, which is grateful for all of you showing up. It's like the average person who goes into graduate psychology has a bunch of unmet needs. And the reason they're there is usually because they're cowards. Because they're terrified of getting their needs met in the real world. Now,
Yeah.
maybe it's because they had bad parents. Maybe it's because society, because of trauma. There's so many dozens of good reasons why people are cowards, to be completely clear. Cowardice is not necessarily something that's, just because of moral failings or something like that. A lot of people are cowards because of very good reason. And so the average person who comes into graduate psychology is a coward. Now, which I probably shouldn't say as a professor in graduate psychology, but, if I get fired, I get fired.
Well,
But
Nancy McWilliams says depressives, but more
it's
or
the same
less,
thing.
yeah.
It's the same thing, and that's exactly why people are so afraid, I think, to have these direct conversations and ask the patient how therapy is going. It takes a lot of courage to ask how things are going. And it's not rocket science, but it takes courage. And most people in the profession don't have a lot of courage. They like to hide behind words, degrees, experiences, sophistication, wisdom, and it's cowardice. And that's what's missing, I think, to some significant degree in graduate training nowadays, is just some very basic practical courage to do things that you don't understand, to take risks, to ask questions, not even radical questions, but like, how is it going between the two of us? What's working? What's not working? Just simple
You're
things.
inviting conflict.
You're inviting conversation. Conflict is the negative framing of it.
That's true.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Can I be a little narcissistic here? I like to think I have a healthy dose of liking myself.
Great.
I'm fairly good at this job, this profession that we do, and I
Awesome.
will occasionally get that. Oh, I've gotten more from you in 3 months than I've gotten in 7 years, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I need to remember that for every time I hear that, I have a patient quietly walking away after the first session, because there is an incompatibility there. So even if I am bold, even if I'm dynamic, even if I'm, kind of smart and good at it, I'm also not everybody's fit. And it's
Correct.
actually a good and successful outcome for them to walk away. I'm not so
Absolutely.
narcissistic to think I would do that with every patient.
Edward,
And-
you're not narcissistic. You're cardiganly self-aware.
Cardiganly.
Someone just tweet that right now. Somebody.
I'm going to grab that word and I'm going to use it. I'm feeling very cardiganly today.
Cardiganly self-aware.
Cardiganly good time.
Oh my God.
It's what bothers me so much is the yassification. It's the affirmation validation. Yes, you should. You've got to do a little bit of affirmation and a little bit of validation. So careful. But
the right to feel that way.
Well,
Yes.
oh my God.
Yeah.
You see what you just did.
Of course, you're right to feel that way.
But what it becomes is the yassification, which is why social media sucks balls so bad, is because it's like the dumbest ideas ever. People are like, oh my God, yes, queen, go girl, which is why. And I established therapy because, like I said, I went to a therapist and he was like, hey, maybe you're trans. I was like, fuck you. And I went and I thought I was going to come up with like a sausage fest as a therapist. I thought it was going to be all dudes all the time. 90% of my clients are female because what they're telling me is they cannot go to most therapists and get somebody to like grab them by the shoulders and be like, what are you doing? Like, look at what you're doing. Like, you're a smart girl. Why are you doing these things? And they're like, oh my God, I don't know. Okay, here, let's talk about it. Instead, it's, oh my God, this is the greatest decision ever. Of course you should move in with this felon. Like, the dumbest stuff in the world.
Yeah.
So it's the yassification. I call it the yassification of therapy, which, validation.
I did a compilation video with a couple of you were on it about, I call it the customer's always right in therapy, where it's just like, is it the therapist's job to affirm everything that the client does?
No.
And I think a huge part of your job should be to push back. If you're the only person pushing back in their life, that should be a big part of what you do.
It's like one of the oldest jokes in our profession that the customer is always wrong.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say to what Jake is saying is the yassification of therapy to me speaks to a deficit of genuine encouragement in the real world.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people
Authenticity.
are really lacking, solid relationships where they can get ordinary and genuine encouragement. Because ordinary encouragement is supposed to sustain us, I think, in romantic relationships, family relationships, friendships, work relationships. And something as a supervisor that I love to do is to encourage my interns because they're great people. They're smart. They're trying. They're interested. They're curious. They have all the right skills and the right stuff, but they doubt themselves because they're interns and stuff. But the truth is sometimes they just need countertransference discussion, but sometimes they just need encouragement. Keep doing what's working, And I think that's, I mean, not to crib Jordan Peterson too much for this particular podcast, but like he's right about that. He was talking about how at his events when people come up to him, they're drastically missing encouragement, And it's the saddest. He cried, and I think he cried for good reason because it's true. I think in the West, men in particular are lacking encouragement. We're used to criticism, we're used to being the bad guy, but we badly need it. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people in society badly need encouragement.
Well, I
you
think we
know?
have to get better at doing it for each other. I think we have to get better
Amen.
at saying, "Love you, bro," and you're being a good
Hype your
dad, even though
boys.
it doesn't feel like you
Hype your
are.
boys.
Hype your
Mhm.
boys. That's right. Something interesting happened a minute ago for me, when Patrick was kind of I used the word conflict. It's like you're asking a client, "How's it going? You know, how do you feel like this relationship is working? How do you feel like this process is working?" I said, "You're inviting conflict." That part of that developmental arc that I went on was I wouldn't have used the word conflict in that context, but one of my axioms has become conflict is necessary and is even healthy if done in a careful way. And so
Yeah.
I've totally depathologized the term for myself so much that I don't even think of it as it's not a dirty word at all.
If you
This
care
is
about
a
the
natural
relationship,
process.
being willing to stay in the conflict is an act of love and an act of caring.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
don't think that makes what Patrick said wrong. I think it is a discussion, but what the conflict is there, whether we address it conversationally or not, if
Yeah.
there's negative emotion that's being held on to by one party or the other.
I think it's an attitude difference is why I disagreed, because I think
Yeah.
you can have that conversation with an exploratory attitude, or you can have it with a conflict oriented attitude. I don't think either is bad or better or worse. I think it's a question of how useful is it to live in conflict in this particular situation, or do we just need to be more curious? Because sometimes curiosity is the better attitude, but sometimes, being a little adversarial for the sake
Yeah.
of the good of the whole is the goal.
Yeah. The another thing that connected to that idea for me was the go back to Jake's yassification, and then connect that back to the whole post-modernity modernity thing. We can't socially construct any behavior that we want into being functional for human beings or optimizing for human beings. There are a limited number of things that human beings can do to support their own development or to optimize their emotional well-being.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reality that the yassification therapists miss, is this social constructivism is kind of taken away from some layers of the field. The idea, like, no, there's some things that have to happen that are a limited scope of things for us to improve, for us to grow, for us to change. Yes, career flex.
I cannot express my appreciation for Dr. Perrin and Sir Lockwood for bringing my mind back to Kernberg here with
Oh, yeah.
the borderline theory, because everybody knows, like, I love borderline personality disorder girls. Like, I work with them in clinic, and maybe it's because my underlying sociopathy or something, but I'm really good at working with them and not getting wound around the axle by their
Yeah.
shenanigans.
Yeah.
And they're in grad school. I was told by two different professors, if somebody identifies or you get the impression that they're borderline
BBL?
personality disorder, yeah, refer them out. If they're blah, 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 refer them out, because it's impossible. They can't be treated. And I'm like,
Oh,
that doesn't
that's
seem
insane.
good, right? And
That's
or
absurd.
they're too hard, right? And so the construct that it's not like a curse put upon you by demons, but instead it's between being healthily neurotic versus psychotic, and you're a borderline somewhere in the between, on a spectrum, in whatever direction. Because Ed, you
Yeah.
keep putting out that sheet with, like, it goes in
Mhm.
various directions.
The
And
graphic
Awesome
on
visual.
the introversion extroversion scale, as
Yeah.
well as the neurotic psychotic
Yes,
spectrum.
thank you for
And
sharing
so-
that the other day, bro. That was
Oh
awesome.
God, dude. It's like when I show that to my BPD girls in my clinic, they cry, because it's the first time that they're realizing, holy shit, there's a map to this, and there's a different way to be. Because I got Heidegger's maps of meaning over here. Yes, there is a different way of being. You can be in a different way. This thing that you think you have, that's not you. You can't take that on your core identity. And which is why in my clinic we talk so much about ergodicity. Who are you? Despite the rapes, despite the molestation, the beatings, the abandonment, the neglect, underneath it all, who are you?
And that's
if
why I
we
wish
can,
they called them relational disorders instead of personality disorders. So you can keep
beautifully put.
personality as personality, keep the disorder as this is how my relationships are impaired specifically.
You're singing to the LMFT choir right now. I'll say that out loud.
I know.
Well, instead of a cyclical, it's an elliptical, and the elliptical isn't quite right, and that's why it gets off. And so if we can bring it into the proper healthy cyclical, well, life is just a dream, right? And the amount of,
or you can just you can tolerate ordinary unhappiness.
Well, I mean,
Linehan?
I believe there were a handful of people who used the ordinary unhappiness.
Probably.
I believe Freud first started used ordinary unhappiness.
Yeah.
So we've been
number of
going a really long time now, and I have to eat my dinner. So can we get some closing thoughts for everybody?
That was actually my closing thought. I have to pee like a pregnant woman.
I just do it in my pants.
The people's therapist is never controversial.
Never.
Correct.
I will just say, I kind of said it a minute ago, but I appreciate the learning community that we have among each other. It is such an iron sharpening iron environment. Being able to receive the graphic that Jake was talking about, that Ed shared the other day, was eye-opening. I've gotten to hear Kernberg live, but I didn't understand enough of his background and research to really put it in context.
He's still alive and lecturing. He's like 97, 98 years old.
Wow.
And angry as ever.
And
Yes.
and we're lucky
he sounds
for
like
that.
Schwarzenegger because he's Austrian. It's really funny to listen to him speaking.
But just to be able to learn and resharpen what I've already learned among such great minds and disciplined professionals who are also lifelong learners, I believe themselves, all of you, it's just amazing. And I just throw extra thanks on there and a happy graduation for Ryan because I think we wouldn't have talked this way if not for him.
That's right.
Love you guys.
Yeah, what's the next route for you, Lysinger? How's that going? Not stressed at all
actually,
about that, I'm sure.
I got delayed on taking my LPC exam because I got flagged for a DWI from 15 years ago. So I've got to take care of. I just had to fill out a form, so hopefully it'll be quick.
From 15 years ago, that was enough to.
Oh yeah.
When I was in the
Should've been
Army,
trans about it.
MEPS does the same thing. The military entrance and processing. You could have you're like, oh, I see you stubbed your toe when you were 9. You need to get an X-ray and 3 signatures from a physician to make sure that that's not still an injury.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ryan you're planning on continuing in the substance recovery treatment
I'm
world,
staying at
right?
the same rehab where I did my internship, except for I get paid now, which is nice.
Hey,
Woo!
buddy.
He's happy to
Selfish
join
capitalist.
Rehabistan, Patrick. What do we
Rehabistan.
think about
Listen,
that?
It's a great
I'll be
theme
in-
park, I say.
I'll be in close contact to make sure he's okay for sure.
That's a good idea.
Have you gotten your first real paycheck yet? Have you gotten your
Yes,
first?
yeah.
What'd
Actually,
you
a couple
spend on
months
it?
ago,
Is
they
that what
started-
you bought the hat with?
A couple months ago, they started paying me to work on Saturdays. So during the week, it was my internship hours, and Saturdays is when I got paid.
Hey, you get
Nice.
man. I'm so happy for you. And you said love you guys. I'm gonna say love you too, bro.
Yeah, we love you, dude.
Honored
Yeah.
honored to be here. Honored to know you.